8 minutes. You can start whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Okay, so good afternoon everybody. We're going to discuss about the Eastern and Southern Europe. This is the name of the groups for the picture. Thank you. So this is our election. We just decided 10 countries, and it's Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Romania, Croatia, Portugal, Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Serbia. That's true that there are many from Europe, the European Union, but you will see some differences between them and some things of common. And also we have some different countries with Turkey and Ukraine. There are exceptions. So first of all, our question, the first question is about finding common things and differences between the countries. So the first one is Spain and Greece have the highest unemployment rate. Yes, I'm Spanish, and it's one of the biggest problems that we have. So why is the reason of this topic? First of all, the crisis of 2008, we didn't recover of this. Second one, our labor market is not well prepared. The education that we have in this country have a lower adaptation. In Spain, it's one of the countries of Europe that we speak less English. So imagine now having this newer industrialization of technology. So it's horrible. And third one, the laws that we have in our market. They protect always they want to protect the people, but at the end they are not protecting them. So the companies, they cannot afford to contract many young people. Yeah. The second one is countries with negative trade balance and also lower tax rate. We think we have considered that when you have a negative trade balance, your domestic demand start growing, and also that's affect in the importation, and they start buying things in other countries. The third one is Germany is the biggest trading partner in this area, and Germany is always one of the biggest countries economically. So imagine also in a geographic way, Germany is super near of the southern and western countries. So also we are talking about one of the most industrialization countries of all the world. So that's the reason. The fourth one is Eastern Europe countries have a lower innovation score than Southern Europe countries. I will discuss a little bit more later, but the main importance there is that the investment that they have. Southern Europe, as Spain, Italy, and Portugal, have higher investment than the other countries. And also, we will discuss a little bit more about this topic. And the fifth, one is the most important, is the inflation of Turkey. Turkey is the highest among. They just changed the norm to Turkey, so I don't know if we need to pronounce different. But the first one is the COVID pandemic. They are still recovering of that, and it's also with the third one, loose monetary policy. When they were in COVID-19, they start decreasing their interest, the interest rate. So that's probably a higher inflation. The second one is the weakened currency. I don't know if you have saw the news some years ago, but they had a battle with the United States. Also, their currency is lower than the euro and the dollar. So when you want to buy something to another country, it's more expensive. So you're buying something more expensive, inflation increase. And the fourth is the political instability. Their president is Erdogan. I'm Spanish, and I know a lot about Erdogan because it's someone that's very polemic. So imagine people don't want to invest in a country that his president is always trying to do weird things. The sixth point, is the point that I just discussed. The differences with the south and the western. We can see that it's higher ease of doing business, product market efficiency, financial system, innovation. Why? First of all, they are more developed and diversified economies. Yeah. Spain, Italy, Portugal are economies that they are in a higher situation if we compare to Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey also, Ukraine. We're not taking the situation of Ukraine right now because it's a special situation. Second one is the integration with the European Union. I will return to the first presentation. Italy, Spain, Portugal, they are in space Schengen, they are part of the European Union, but it's not the case of Romania, Bulgaria. They are part of the European Union, but they are not inside the space Schengen. The space Schengen is I think that all we know, but only to be clear, is the space that you can export and import without taxes, and also can move movement of people. And also Romania, Ukraine, and Serbia, they are not part of the European Union, so all this reason provocate that we are more integrated in the European Union with France, Germany. They are powerful countries, and it's easier to have doing business and all this stuff. And the third one is the more cultural and historical. As we know, like the Western countries, they were part of the, not everyone was part of the Union Soviet, but they were like related, they were communists, so like their policy were a little bit different, and this like also provoked like this situation. So now our advice is to invest in Portugal. Why? This is like a little bit the summary. Solar energy, real estate, and plastics. First of all, why Portugal? The reason why we choose Portugal, first of all, is like the low tax rate. Among other potential countries, Portugal provides the most appealing tax rate. That's the reason. Second one is a friendly environment, and as you know, Portugal is part of the European Union, have many like partnership with other countries, so it's one of he will not have like any problem. And also the golden visa program. Like get resident from investment, joining, same benefit as citizen. Yeah, it's super easy to get it. So first of all, like solar energy advantages. I know a lot of Portugal because the neighborhood of Spain. So as Spain, they have like many days with sun. So it's very easy to have like invest in solar energy because they will be like the country to invest. The second one is that they play a role in the energy plan. They are investing a lot right now. And the expected return of CAGR is 6.5%. And I just put this graphic that we can see like the investment, like the energy market of solar, that they are increasing. So Portugal is going to be one of the countries most important in this topic. But what is the risk is the limited capacity of the electricity grid and the costly technology. Second one is the real estate rental. And we have found, this is like a very special topic, but if we compare Lisbon, that is the capital of Portugal, to the other capitals of Europe, the big capitals, we have seen that the rental yield is higher than the others. So we consider that we can be like an advantage, and this is like the advantages, and the risk is short-term rental restriction for sure, and rent protection legislation, because if you want like to protect people, young students to have like a rental, you need to put some rules. And the third one is the plastic. If we compare like with our election, the unique country that can compare with Portugal is Serbia, but at the same time they have some problems. They don't have like, they are not so efficient as Portugal because Portugal is inside the Schengen space and all this. So we consider that can be one of the countries that can be one of the most important in this topic. And also, yeah, like if we compare with Serbia, because the other countries they don't have like this type of market. It's super difficult to find a country with that. And that's all. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Is there any question from the class? So you chose Portugal as a final suggestions, and you actually selected 3 very distinctive industries, including solar energy, real estate, and plastic industry. So if I can only choose one, which one of them would you recommend someone?
Okay, in my case, that's my personal opinion, solar energy, because that's true that plastic can be also something like special topic right now with the global, like with the climate change. So solar energy would be like the solution to find like a new way to have like new resources, and they are growing a lot. I just put this graphic, and we can see like the differences. Like it's growing, but it's like this is the from we compare to 2020, we have the double of investment. So for sure, in my case, it's solar energy.
Yeah, I understand the market is growing for sure, especially for Portugal and other neighboring countries, as well as the emerging markets as mentioned. But as you know that if you want to invest in solar energy, you need a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure. Right? So for the foreign investors like us, we really want to invest in this kind of industries. Does the government, does local government provide any incentive program for us to invest it? Because then the legal issue, we need to comply with the local laws and regulations, because I understand the energy industry usually will be highly regulated by the host government, right?
Yeah, like first of all, I need to say that also it's a good idea to invest in solar energy, because if we compare to the other countries of the European Union, they don't have like this climate, because in Spain and Portugal we have like this advantage to have sun like every day, not every day, but every week you can have sun. And the second one, yes, they are putting some policies to try to have more investment of this type of companies or this type of other governments, also for the European Union to invest in Portugal and Spain to have like higher, this type of products. So they are trying to have like more policies that also is something a little bit new. So it's depending on the country. I remember that I will talk a little bit in the case of Spain, and the last president, he started putting like some restrictions to have like this energy. So like all the countries were a little bit annoyed because we know that it's going to be the solution for us. Like Portugal and Spain, their topic, they have money now for tourism, but as we can see with COVID, it's like a little bit unstable, and they want to invest in that. So the new governments that right now there's they're from left, I think so, yeah, they're investing a lot in.
Yeah, because next week, next presentations and the following presentation, we're gonna look at the institution and infrastructure factors, right? So we will see, you will see that whether or not if we get a consideration about legal factors, regulation issues, solar energy is still a promising industry for us to invest. We will see, right? The question I just asked you, maybe you can get more elaboration in the next presentation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next one. Group 2.
Hi everyone, we're Group 2, and our designated region is the Northern Europe and Western Europe. So first of all, we have chosen 10 different countries for our investment choices, and later on we'll provide some of the figures about business figures and why these figures we highlight and provide the investment choices for our investors. So the first business figures is the GDP growth rate. First of all, we can see that Luxembourg has a relatively great performance in this figure, and it has a really great score from 2019 to 2021 compared to other countries. And we further look into why it generates this kind of great scores. It's because its industry mainly focus on its finance structure. So this is why it's relatively stable than other countries. And we can further look into other countries such as Sweden and Denmark. We also put these two countries into our potential investment choices. Oh, wait. We can compare Sweden and Denmark to other countries such as United Kingdom, France, and Iceland, which these countries have deeply affected by COVID-19 during the 2020. So during this first figure, we have chosen 3 potential investment choices: Luxembourg, Sweden, and Denmark. And further other business figures will look deeply into these 3 different countries and why we made our last choice. So the next figure we look into is the total export and import during their GDP. So from this chart, it demonstrated all the 10 countries' total export and import rate and their GDP. We can first obviously see that Luxembourg has a relatively really high score compared with other 10 countries. It has about 200% in their export and 180% in their import. So we further look into why it has a great performance in this figure is because just as I mentioned, it has mainly focused on its financial structure and it's a really open economy. Apart from Luxembourg, we also look into Denmark and Iceland, but compared with other countries, though they didn't have the better scores such like Luxembourg, but it's also above average, so we still put them in our potential list for the investors. Move on to the ease of doing business score. The ease of doing business score is actually based on how the regulatory environment for the business to conductive and how they're easily enter into this market. So we can see that Denmark has the highest score in this chart. And Denmark isn't just the highest in these 10 countries, but Denmark also has the highest score in the whole region. So Denmark is actually why we deemed it as our top potential list. So move on to such as Sweden and Luxembourg. Although they're still really above average, but like Luxembourg, it doesn't have the relatively high compared with other countries. It has actually because it has the business tax in this country, and the climate here have onerous requirements for the business to enter. So it has scored relatively low ease of doing business score. So move on to the next figures. We have overall business dynamism score and overall labor market efficiency score. So the overall business dynamism score is actually estimate the country and its structure for the business to enter, whether it has open to new business models or open to new way of business, or how they can organize work through their own country structure. So we can also see that Denmark and Sweden has the relatively high compared with different other countries, but Luxembourg isn't relatively higher than other countries. And we can see in the labor market efficiency score, Denmark also scores relatively higher than other 10 countries. It's because it has the ability to boost the workforce and that the laborer have the more efficiency to do their work. So based on these figures we have chosen 3 potential countries for our investors is Luxembourg, Sweden, and Denmark. So we further look into Luxembourg has a really open economy and has a really stable GDP growth rate rather than other 10 countries. But because of its higher, it has higher business requirements, maybe in their government. So we move on to the other 2 choices. Sweden also have a really high ease of doing business score, but it has a relatively high tax rates. So we just move on to the 3rd one, which is Denmark. And Denmark, we have, based on our last different figures, we have known that Denmark have the highest ease of doing business score, and they have also highest overall labor market efficiency score. Furthermore, it has relatively low tax rate. So we have Denmark for our top choices to invest here. So later on, Sean will tell us deeper about why we chose Denmark as our top investment choice.
Okay, thanks, Barry. So among all the competitive countries in Western and Eastern Europe, we view Denmark as the most worth investing one for 4 different factors. So first of all, let's look at politics. According to 2023 report, Denmark's economy freedom score is actually 77.6, and making the economy the 9th freedom country in 2023 report. And besides that, they're also focusing on pursuing economic reforms to improve their people's ways of living. And second, about government aspect, Denmark's regulation and laws are highly favorable to business. The top tax rate and corporate tax rate are respectively 58% and 22%, which is comparatively low compared to other European countries. So next, about employee there, the majority individual in Denmark are multilinguals, so which makes it easier for foreign investor to invest there. So last but not least, technology and innovation. Denmark has put a lot of focus on renewable energy, such as like biotech and life science, which improve their people overall living environment. So after knowing why you would throw money investing in Denmark, let's look at investment opportunity there. So Denmark is regarded as like most innovations leading country in Europe, specializing in like food innovation as well as like life science industry. So as an international hub for science, Denmark actually provide a lot of respective political favor to outside country to invest there. And then for food innovation industry, the Danish food industry is well known for their like stronghold area, like food quality or food safety.
Time's up.
Okay, so time's up. So can you just give is it the final slide?
No, actually we still have like challenge and the solution, and then also risk assessment, but this one we can skip it because we just pretty cover the contents like very set and also delegated.
Okay, so I just throw my question to you. Okay, so obviously the Denmark is the one you chose, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that you provide a very good analysis on each of the indicators and provide the highlights of the data. And Denmark is chosen obviously because it got a very good scores in terms of innovation and ease of doing businesses among all the regions. And I think it's really difficult to choose a country in your region because your region covers most of the advanced countries in the world with relatively good data among all of the indicators. My question is, given its rather open economy in Denmark, we can perceive that probably there are more foreign investors are interested in the country, right? So if we are the foreign investors, one of them, we will face a very strong competition in Denmark. And how would you recommend us to minimize this kind of competition risk?
Like what industry?
Yeah, which industry you suggested?
Actually, we suggest like knowledge industry, for example, like design and software to prevent like inflections rate, like resulting from their high portion of export and export. So I think for like this kind of industry, I should just say they will like have really competitive investors. But a lot of their investors are actually focusing on, just I said, like food innovations and also like life science there because that is like relatively political favors that because they have like policy backed support of those kind of industry. So I think based on given the situation that we select a less competitive knowledge industry, this kind of like competitive situation will be much more better.
Is there a particular companies? What do you mean by knowledge industries?
Let me think for a while.
Like the software company or design?
Yeah, designing the software, I guess.
Okay, so I would say that if even for the knowledge industries like that, it is still highly competitive in Denmark, especially in the Scandinavian countries, right? They are featured by this kind of industries for a long time. Next time, try to make sure that, of course, the time management. And second one is that try to make sure that there is a very consistent analysis throughout your analysis in the previous slides and how it linked to your final recommendation. Because for now, even though you already explained why the knowledge industries are chosen, I didn't see that the linkage between your analysis and the final recommendation. Okay, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next group. Group 3.
My name is Ruby, we're from Group 3, and our research region is Caribbean and Central America. So this is our agenda. Our presentation includes snapshot of the indicators data, the highlights of the data, and some analyzing questions according to our chosen investment country. So this is our snapshot of our data. We have researched for 10 countries, including Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, and so on. So moving on to the highlights of the data, I'll begin with the economic aspect. So first, we discovered that Haiti and Jamaica have lower GDP growth rates. And for the possible reasons, we assume that Haiti's political instability and their increasing insecurity might be the main reason. As for Jamaica, the high and unsustainable public debt and also their high reliance on imported goods might be the factors. Next, the unemployment rate was high in Costa Rica but low in Guatemala. And as for the possible reason, so we first zooming to see Costa Rica. The COVID-19 pandemic and also the following structural changes in their economy might be the main affecting factor of their high employment rates. And while Guatemala has high rural population, which means they have many self-employed farmers. However, despite their unemployment rates, they have some problems such as low average wage and also inequality issues in their country. Next, both total export and import were low in Jamaica and El Salvador. And after some comparison and discussion, we believe that there are some similar reasons for both two countries related to their current trade environment. So the last part of the economic aspect would be the first direct investment, which is the so-called FDI indicators. And through discussing these indicators, we can see that FDI currently represent one of the biggest sources of developing countries' external financing. Then I will pass on to Asman to explore the next section and also the rest of the presentation.
All right, so continuing our discussion of Central American and Caribbean countries, overall, these countries are very open to doing businesses. There's some exception to this, but on average, they're all above 80, which shows that they are easy to establish businesses as well as running them. And looking on the market and innovation capabilities score, some of these have some issues, such as Haiti with high foreign invention and debt, as well as political instability due to the high number of natural disasters and changing governments, but these things can be improved. But let's talk about Panama. This is our country of choice due to a vast number of regions, notably what those people know is for, the Panama Canal. So, talking about Panama's location, they have amazing infrastructure, not just for supplies, but as well as international imports and exports with the Panama Canal, as well as the airports. And there's been an overall strong economic growth due to, one, the connection to the US dollar. And so while the local currency, the Balboa, is used internally for all external businesses, it's connected to the US dollar, which is extremely stable. So overall, this has led to a high GDP growth rate compared to other countries in this region. Now, talking about some of the infrastructure, this is ranked first in Latin America and in the Caribbean. This is due to the strong political stability and business-friendly environment. With the democratic system and private-public partnership law, there's quite a lot of foreign investments and 100% foreign own companies in Panama. In fact, their legal system actually enables groups to have a low tax rate and even zero if their money is coming in outside of the country itself, due to this concept of territoriality. So, on the specific tax policies incentives, we have areas like the Cologne Free Trade Zone, where over 2,500 companies have established themselves with minimal tax rates, given they follow certain requirements, such as a minimum number of local employees. And there's other laws like number 122, which spur international investment by creating provisions that allow these processes to be speed-tracked. For specific investment opportunities, there's 4 main industries that we're looking at. One of those is tourism. Many international companies, such as resorts, Hyatt, etc., have set up in Panama for incoming visitors to enjoy. Real estate is also growing with a strong demand through multiple sectors. There's a great stability on the housing front as well as in commercial real estate. Additionally, energy has been growing throughout the country with special incentives that the government has created, but this is probably not an area that we personally may explore in our next phase. But the special economic areas are the unique zones that actually many of the Fortune 500 companies have established themselves in Panama to deliver on an exceptional area of doing business. Now, talking about some of the investments risks, they have a rule of law and some issues around corruption. But this isn't something that has deterred many multinational businesses, given they have sufficient capital as well as other means of navigating bureaucracy. Additionally, locally, there is fairly high unemployment rate and deficiencies in their educational vocational training. And so the businesses that would be attracted to Panama aren't those that rely heavily on the local workforce, but primarily would be built from external businesses, but mostly being headquartered themselves in Panama. So for our overall suggestion, Panama has great potential, looking at its location, looking at its strong legal system and political stability. And so we would hope to further explore the infrastructure related to businesses that would benefit by having their headquarters in Panama and really serving both the overall Central America market. All right, this is our work allocation, and we're open for questions now.
Thank you. Any questions? No. So I think in your region, Panama will not be the wrong choice. It's always the best choice in your region anyway, because we know that it has a very good infrastructure in terms of Panama Canal, and it has highly developed transportation and any other related industries. And I saw that you have 4 specific industries you suggested, right? Tourism, real estate, energy, and the final one, the most interesting one is that you actually can take advantage of special economic zone that hosted by Panama governments, right? So if my question is rather local, is that if I'm a Taiwanese company, I want to invest in Panama, is there a specific area of business you suggest me to look at into? Any industries or among both of the industries you suggested, what kind of business I can do in Panama?
So there's been certain sectors that have seen larger growth. I think construction as a whole has been rebounding post-pandemic fairly well. And I think given Taiwan's strength in the electronics and semiconductor industry, that would also be an area that we want to explore.
Yeah, well, I asked you this question because that think about, of course, these are the 4 promising industries right now in Panama. But is there any specific to Taiwanese context that we can tap into, right? For instance, you said that our Taiwanese governments, or is there any collaboration with the Panama governments? Maybe we can look into this kind of factor in the next presentations. Would it help the Taiwanese company to invest, to take advantage of that? And even the Taiwanese company, we have electronic components kind of manufacturing capacity and advantages. And how can you apply in Panama? For instance, how can it be linked with the Panama Canal? We can take advantage of that and transit this kind of unfinished products or intermediate products to America or maybe in South America. That can be a potential investment opportunity. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
You can further look into that.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, of course.
Yes, I have a question. Is Panama part of some trade union, or what are opportunities in this topic?
There are a few trade alliances, from what I understand, in the Central American region and with specific partners like the US and certain Asian countries. But was there a specific area you were wondering about?
No, just opportunity, for example, for goods to export to other countries, or maybe additional, like to expand business, maybe even outside, and like potential growth.
Not too sure.
I think that's a very good question. That Panama is one of the most important, for instance, free trade zone in that region, or maybe in relation with the Asian Pacific region. Maybe we can take advantage of that. We can position Panama as a middle point, right, or entry point, and we export our products into that country, and we do and further export to other free trade zone partners. We can take advantage of that, and also use the highly developed infrastructure to lower down the transportation cost. Right. So there could be another.
Yeah, we'll do further research on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand this is maybe a difficult topic because institution
Thank you.
Okay. Next group. Thank you. So do you want to take a break? Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay.
我的刚好3分半，大概会帮他谈大概多久？
好，谢谢。
之类的。真的讲不完。而且我刚开始在讲说，全部的人都在看他，那个人讲。但是我就突然觉得很好笑，为什么大家全部都看到我？然后我就很想笑，就看我在憋笑。因为第一种他讲的话，就是看到我就很想笑，然后我在憋笑，这样。真的很好笑，我就很想，就是我跟不同的人对到眼，而且每个人都很认真。然后那个我觉得这个蛮好笑的。有，
因为昨天
没有，我刚刚没有想到用标的，但后来的时候还是比较好，就算了，真的没有人会听。
因为我找到跟村长说，我刚跟村长说要找口头。
我就剩那个，但是我删了很多解释的例子，比如说为什么他的词的那个。你说有吗？什么开始了？哦，对，因为我不想聊下去。只有你记得，对，有件事情带那个原理吧。我喜欢我刚刚。那你之前就上来说今天谁会找
However, each business rate is high, especially as the branding and quality of compensation. The labor standards are higher than and Colombia, and like other parts of the minority bias, especially that's one of the most developed countries.
学生的上升。
Second best country in terms of investment behind Brazil. It is pretty popular in like a lot of people South Korea, Japan, and China, and international trade zone and when it comes to the recommendations and how to tackle the different challenges, we have all need the coverage, advance the currency and unfairness, eventually by investing in the investing in promising sectors, like invest in vocational training to like fight against the
他在旁边，这样就好。还要给4个钱？对。哦，直接交互动100、100。你刚其他看过的都很喜欢做到。哦，这都比较适合。
以后我们要做一个成为会长。
对不对？下一届就让大二去选了，不要再搞了。
你也可以约吗？
或者我们选，然后我们说，哎，那我们也在吃餐。我每天要花钱，然后我在哪？
我是选会长，然后就把。
我是选会长，我把枪给评审。哎，我也是，我记得。叫评审自己，你们自己想办法。然后把我约出来。那把它放在一起做。对。
都一样，然后就给你好笑，别单对照。
我们盖这个，
我现在修，这个是赚钱是
蛮挤的，蛮挤的。我们有一个在管院里面，反正你在哪都可以找，对，到底我都对，应该对。
Okay, guys, let's continue the presentation on page 4. Okay, your fault.
第一个，
Good afternoon, everyone. We're Group 4, and today we're going to introduce South America. So we'll start with an economic overview and then analyze the data and finally present our topics and make a conclusion. So let's take a quick look at the economy of South America. The region contributed around 4% of the world's GDP in 2020. which isn't a large share compared to other continents. Its average inflation rate and unemployment rate have been high, and both were about twice the world average in 2021. And as a region with potential for economic growth, its FDI net inflow exceeds the world average. Export is an important component of its economy. Its major exports are natural resources like oil, gas, and minerals, and its agriculture is also a major industry. However, faced with some common problems in business environments, its ease of doing business score is lower than the world average, which may create uncertainties for investors. So in the next part, we will focus on these indicators and dig deeper into the performance of each country.
Now I'm going to talk about some highlights and trends in our data. First, we'll look at the abnormal numbers. When we look at the GDP growth rate, we can see that most of the countries in South America, they have a positive growth rate. But Venezuela, they have a negative growth rate. And also, its inflation rate is over 100%. It is because they are still recovering from the economic crisis in 2019. So we believe it's not a good time to invest in Venezuela right now. And next, when we look at the unemployment rate, we can see that Colombia has the highest. And also, Colombia has a negative trade balance. This is because in 2019, the international oil price had a fluctuation, and one of the main trading goods of Colombia is oil. So this had an impact on their international trading. But when we look at the business aspect, we can see that Colombia actually performs pretty well. It has a second highest ease of doing business score, and also the other like business dynamism and financial system score are also pretty well. So we kept it as one of our investment prospects. Now I'm going to talk about the trend we see in our top 3 picks, which are Chile, Brazil, and Colombia. First, these 3 countries, they all have high GDPs and GDP growth rate. For example, Brazil has the highest GDP in South America. Colombia and Chile, they both have a real GDP growth rate of over 5%, meaning they are growing economies. And second, these 3 countries, they all have close trading relationships with other countries in South America. When we look at the top 5 trading partners in South America, we see that their names appear really often. So we believe that it will be easier to build international trading relationships if we start from investing in these 3 countries. And lastly, these 3 countries, they all have high business environment scores. For example, all 3 of them have the highest innovation capability score. And especially our top pick, Chile, it has the highest score in almost every aspect of the business environment.
So as she's just said, we're going to focus ourselves on analyzing these 3 countries, Brazil, Colombia, and Chile, Chile being the country we choose in the end, and you'll know why right after. So when it comes to Brazil, as part of the BRICS, it's one of the biggest economies in South America. It's actually the biggest one. Very dynamic on an international scale, exporting a lot, importing a lot, and has a very high capacity of innovation, being one of the most developed countries in South America. However, when it comes to the risk, it knows a very high unemployment rate, especially after the COVID-19, around 30%, which is very high. And of course, it's definitely impacted by the inflation, which might be a big problem while wanting to invest in this country. And it also comes with high labor taxes. So when it comes to the challenges, first, it's a very competitive market, of course, and it's reaching maturity as being one of the BRICS, and of course being very developed. At some point, it's gonna, the growth gonna slow down. So of course, when it comes to the Colombia, then it's one of the countries in South America who knows like a big rebound after the pandemic when it comes to the GDP growth. It's a very dynamic economy, and a lot of people, a lot of investors, are currently investing in Colombia, especially because of the resources. It's not as impacted by the inflation as Brazil and Chile, but still a bit. However, the tax rates are not the best, not favorable to international trade, I would say, and there's a negative trade balance, very dependent on its domestic economy. and the employment rate is very high, especially after the COVID-19. So when it comes to the challenges, the tariff barriers, of course, the recovering from the pandemic, and also a corruption which is strongly present. So finally, Chile. Chile is the second country after Brazil when it comes to investments, international FDI. So yes, it trades with a lot of Asian countries such as China, South America, and Japan, and is very open to international trade and foreign investments thanks to its free trade zone and low entry barriers. However, the currency is very unstable, the Chilean peso, and the unemployment rate is very high, similar to Brazil, around 40% or something, as well as the population being poorly qualified. So it's a very competitive market, of course, knowing that it's very attractive, but there are some social disparities impacting the capacity of innovation, and which is reinforced with the employment rate. So to conclude, we decided to choose Chile for these 4 different factors: the economic growth, knowing because of its rebounding GDP growth after the pandemic; the global competitiveness, because Chile ranked as the best rank among the South American countries, ahead of Brazil and Colombia when it comes to its competitiveness. Of course, the low taxes due to stimulate the international trade. When it comes to the international trade, of course, the incentives and low entry barriers, which are beneficial for the international investors and stimulate, of course, international trade for the country. And finally, the business environment, knowing that Chile scores pretty well in all of these criteria. So some recommendation to tackle different risks and challenges while investing in Chile. First one, of course, remain attentive to the political and economic situation in the country, which is quite normal. Secondly, maybe try to meet the coverage against currency and non-payment risks by investing maybe in a refuge currency like US dollars. Third, invest in promising segments of the Chilean economy, maybe in which there is a high demand, maybe in machinery, electrical machinery, vehicles, parts, and that. And finally, invest in vocational training and advocate for policy change in order to fight against the unemployment rate, which is very high. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Any questions from class? No? So I think your presentation was brilliant. Okay, really good. Okay, because you provided very reliable analysis on the business economic factors in your regions. And I think I'm most impressed by your solid justification why the 3 countries were shortlisted and why Chile stood out by the end. Okay, and all your recommendations are really in line with what you get from your analysis. Okay, very good presentation. Thank you very much. Next group, group 5.
So hi, we are Group 5, and today we are going to give a presentation on global database of Central Asia and South Asia. And here are our group members. And so it is the general introduction of this area. So firstly, because of the geography factors, this area has diverse culture and different ethnic groups. And because geography factors and also political factors, so they are still progress in economic development. But they work intimately with their regional cooperation. Number one risk here is that poverty and political instability is really common in this region. But overall speaking, this region is a strategic location and has rich natural resources, so it is a key player of the region trade and investment. And here are the countries we have chosen. So we have 3 countries from Central Asia and 7 countries from South Asia.
And here are like the map of the Central Asia. So in case you guys don't know, like it is Hasake in Chinese and Uzbek, and those other countries you have chosen. And here is the South Asia. So we have Pakistan, Nepal, and Bhutan. And also the island over there is Maldives and also Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And so here comes the economic aspect of this region. So about the GDP, India has the highest GDP amongst in this region. And I think it is not surprising because they have a huge population which is still growing. So it drives their economic needs. And also India is one of the most fastly growing economy in the world. And they have diverse economy because they have different strong sector in service, manufacturing, and agriculture. And that is the GDP growth rate. Maldives has the highest GDP growth rate in this region. And I think most of people is familiar with this because they have a booming tourism industry. And also because they are a developing country, so they have a lot of ongoing infrastructure project by their government. And here is the as per statistic, and the higher study as per comes to the Maldives too, and because they're not only because they're tourism industry, but because they export fish, which is surprising to me, and also the import. Like the Maldives, they also have the highest total import. Because I think it's quite obvious because Maldives is a small island, so they heavily rely on importing to meet their domestic needs. So they need to transport food from India to Maldives, and it costs a lot. And here comes the business environment.
Okay, so since we don't have a lot of time, so we'll quickly go over the data below. So let's put emphasis on the data marked. For total tax rate, please focus on Tajikistan for 67.3% and Pakistan for 33.9%, which is the lowest. And for labor market efficiency score, please focus on Tajikistan for 59.8, which is above average. And financial system score, please focus on India for 69.5 and Pakistan for 55, and which both of them are above average. For product market efficiency score, India for 50.4 and Tajikistan 54.6 are both over average. And the last but not least, the ease of doing business score is India. Focus this on 67.5. Okay, so after the data we see in previous slides, we chose 4 potential countries, which is Tajikistan, Maldives, Pakistan, and India. So India is the last country we're targeting. The investment prospects of India is high GDP growth, huge middle class, many incentives for FDI and infrastructure programs in English. And the investment opportunities is computer hardware and software sector, English-speaking labor force, large population. These 2 parts will be thoroughly go through in the later presentation. And the risks and challenges of India is complex regulatory environments and cultural differences. To tackle these 2 risks, for the first one, we think we should cooperate with local partners and sell part of the business to the local government. And for the cultural differences, we think that we should hire local specialists to eliminate the cultural misunderstanding. Okay, so why are we going to choose India? There are 4 advantages of India. The first one is high GDP growth rate and diverse markets. You guys may be wondering why don't we choose Maldives since it has the biggest GDP growth rate among the 4 countries mentioned above. There are 3 reasons. The first one is that because India has more diverse market than Maldives and all the other Central and South Asia. And the second one is that there are everyone knows that India has huge population and a large and growing middle class are over 100 millions. And among the 100 millions laborers, there are a wide range of consumer preferences and behaviors. And that's why we chose India instead of Maldives. And the second advantage is that India is more robust and stable economy. India has been one of the fastest growing major economies, like we just mentioned above, which is that it is expected to grow at a rate of around 8.7 in GDP. So this is the second reason why we choose India. And the third one is that India's government encourages investments in foreign investments. So there are several measures we've gone through, but there are four we're going to talk about. And the first one is the FDI policy. Because of the FDI policy, it allows foreign investors to earn up to 100% equity in many sectors. And the second one is also about the FDI policy. The FDI policies has various incentives that encourage foreign companies to manufacture their products in India. And the third one is a good infrastructure development. It leads to an easier and more cost-effective to do the business in the country. And the last but not least is the special economic zones. It offers taxes, exemptions, and simplify the regulatory procedures. The last one is superior skilled workforce. India has a well-developed education system which leads to a large number of skilled graduates, and also among the workers in India, most of them are English-speaking workers. And third one, the large growing IT industry leads to the developing a highly skilled workforce. And the last one is that the investment in employee training and development. That many companies in India put emphasis in training their employees, and which ensure that they remain competitive in the global marketplace. And that's all for today. Okay, thanks for listening.
Okay, any questions? No? Before asking you the question, I just have some minor comments. Okay. For instance, the pie charts you showed in the very beginning, in the first session of your analysis, I think perhaps they are not the best presentation of the data you were referring to, because for this kind of pie chart, usually you're referring to something aggregate as 100%. But here, it is actually individual statistics, right? So maybe bar charts in your second session is much more, it's better, okay? So maybe next time you can change that. Otherwise, it'll be confusing for me. I will assume that all of them together was 100%, okay? And also, it will be good that when you provided the data, not only just provide an individual statistic, it would be better if you can provide an average. For instance, what is the average scores in each of the indicators, and you can set a line on that. So when you are referring to higher or lower, then we can know exactly what you are saying, okay? Because we have the basic line, okay? Or you can put the average, the world average, not only in your region, but also the world or whole, around the world. What will be the total average scores in this kind of the data, and we can see how far or how near of your country with the world average. That's just another suggestions. Okay. So regarding your recommendation, India was chosen, I think, for a very good reason. Not only because it has a very good economic and promising performance in terms of industry sections and business and economic factors. I think, but also it has a very large population, right, which were very critical for the consumer products. But again, if we're assuming that there's a promising or opportunity for everyone to invest, there will be the perceived increased competition, not only from the domestic market, but also from the foreign investors. So what would be your suggestions for me, if I'm a Taiwanese investor, I want to take a part in Indian market? Is there a specific investment opportunity for me?
We think that the industry in India currently are mostly about working on the outsourcing for other foreign investment. So we're thinking if we developing some intellectual property, that would be a better choice.
What do you mean by building intellectual property? You mean
just IT industry, because I have searched online and like the news say like the Taiwanese company, the reason why they didn't go to India to invest for it is because they think China is a better choice. But right now, due to the political reasons, I think like India might be a better choice rather than the China's right now.
Yeah, if you really look at into online, that a couple of years ago we have a very large news about a labor issue. We have a company in Taiwan we call Withdraw. They had a large issue about the dispute between the employment and employers, local employers, and the Taiwanese top management because there's a kind of cultural conflict. So maybe you can look at into this kind of issues next time, because next time we're going to look at the social and cultural factor and see why there will be decreasing number or amount of foreign investors from Taiwan, because it was a very large amount of Taiwanese companies, especially electronic component manufacturers in India, but now they withdrew their investment from India. You can look at it into why. Okay, thank you.
We will do more research on that.
Yeah, next group, group 6.
Wait. So hello everyone, we are group 6 and we are going to introduce economic aspect and business environment in East, Southeast, and Pacific Asia. And here are the countries that we selected. And first of all, I would like to talk about GDP growth rate. And in this region, the growth rate of Japan and Thailand are low, and is about 1.6%. And the reason for Japan is that their currency devaluation problem and aging population. And the reason for Thailand is COVID-19. Their tourism industry has been hugely affected. And as for China, their GDP growth rate is 8.1%. And there are 3 causes: a low base period, a strong labor force, and important business partner of many countries. And next, let's talk about inflation and deflation. And the Philippines and New Zealand are in high inflation. And the reason is that in 2021, ocean freight stayed high, and these 2 countries are highly dependent on imports. So their CPI are higher than others. And as for Japan, Japan is still struggling to the impact of economic bubble burst, and its domestic demand is quite low too. And as for unemployment rate, China and Australia have high unemployment rates due to the lockdown in 2021. And also Australia was undergoing industrial transformation, switching their focus from mining and agriculture industry to service industry. And as for Thailand, its unemployment rate has been remained low for years. And because a lot of people in Thailand are not counted in labor force, so their unemployment rate are low. And next, I would like to talk about trade balance. China are the highest trade surplus because it has an adequate labor force and a lot of products are made in China. And as for the Philippines, Philippines has a high trade deficit due to 3 reasons. They are highly rely on imports and lack of foreign investment, and their poor performance in the agriculture and service industry. So as for foreign trade degree of dependence, Singapore has the highest degree, and because it has a small domestic market and their dam and the location of its country. So they are highly focused on international trade. And these 3 countries are the major trading partners of the 10 countries we choose. China, USA, and Japan are the major trading partners. And for foreign direct investment, and Singapore's total export, and no. Singapore has the highest net inflow and net outflow, which means Singapore both get investment and from abroad and invest a lot of money to foreign countries.
And next, I would like to share with you some key indicators of the business environment in these countries. So first, let's look at the ease of doing business. Notably, New Zealand is scored 100 by the World Bank, and it actually ranks #1 among all the countries in the globe in 2020. In fact, New Zealand has topped the ease of doing business ranking since 2017, which is an extraordinary feat. And next, let me explain you why. Because New Zealand government is very supportive in building such a business-friendly environment, including the funding, resources, and other forms of assistance that help the company to get off the ground and grow. For example, New Zealand Business Visa extends a unique opportunity for entrepreneurs and investors, and their government also creates a special business system platform to help the companies. And this has made New Zealand an attractive destination to start a business. So next, let's look at the total tax rate. We can see that the tax rate of Singapore is pretty low compared to that of China or even Australia. Singapore is known for its trade focus and open economy policies. In fact, Singapore excels in almost every dimension, as you can see our slide here, including the overall products, market efficiency score, and all other figures above. So as for our investment choice, after examining all indicators, we believe that China has the greatest investment prospects, and here's why. First of all, although the double-digit annual increase in GDP has slowed down, China still experienced a high growth rate for the past few years. And despite all the pandemic and the ongoing trade tension, it's still relatively high compared to other countries. Second, China has undergone a transformation from the labor-intensive industry to a high-value-added industry like electronic equipment. And this shift is expected to increase the gross profit margin of Chinese enterprises in the future. And lastly, China has maintained a stable inflation rate and a strong domestic demand, with friendly relationship with major energy countries like Russia and high domestic food self-sufficiency. So it makes like China is less affected by the outer environment, making a more stable investment option.
Okay, now we're going to talk about some of the opportunities of investing in China and why these sectors might be of interest at this time. So the first one is green energy, and this is due to government initiatives to reduce dependency on fossil fuels and reduce CO2 emissions. And the compound annual growth rate of this sector is more than 8.7% over the next few years. So there is expected growth in this area. So one specific example is electric vehicles, which is actually expected to have an even higher compound annual growth rate of 30.1% over the next few years. and some encouraging initiatives are the fact that 30 Chinese cities have made plans to achieve 100% electrified public transit. The second area of interest may be healthcare, as China is the second largest healthcare market in the world. And some of these opportunities are driven by an aging population, economic growth, and expanding basic health insurance. So driving the health service growth is the high emphasis on quality of life, and driving the growth in premium health services is driven by a growing middle class in the area. And this one does have an expected compound annual growth rate of 6.2% between 2020 and 2025. So,
time's up.
Okay, assuming that will be your final slides, or
we have
last one?
risks, but
Oh, okay. So I can see that you suggested three industries in China, right? Green energy, healthcare, and technology. I think technology, everybody knows about that. It's a very kind of the norm in Chinese market right now. But I'm more interested about the healthcare. So can you elaborate more about why do you see the healthcare in particular session? Because we know that healthcare, there are a lot of industries involved, right? From the biotechnology, private clinic, or large hospitals. I don't know which one you're referring to.
I think I would also need to look into to tell you exactly precisely which area. But in general, I think the encouraging statistic is the annual growth rate and driving factors of growing middle class and the higher emphasis on quality of life in areas.
Yeah, but it would be interesting that if we can look for more information about the healthcare indicators, perhaps in the next couple presentation about infrastructure innovation, this kind of thing. Because if you look at the healthcare sectors, they are private and public, right? For the public sector, of course, they are highly regulated, as most governments do. And there are a lot of, for instance, in Taiwan, there are a lot of the healthcare services provided the right to invest in China, but that failed. Maybe you can look into the reason why. Maybe it's a cultural factors, or maybe it's about the regulation factors, so on and so forth. But I think healthcare definitely would be a good choice to invest in China. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next group. Group 7.
Investment opportunities in Middle East and North Africa. And this is our table content. In the aspect of the economy, we found that 6 out of 10 countries' trade balance are negative, and Saudi Arabia has a higher trade balance. As for their trade partners, we have found that most of these countries have the United States, China, Turkey, India, and Germany. And also, we have found that 2 out of countries' FDI net inflow are negative, and also in the aspect of the business environment, we have found that 8 out of 10 countries' scores of ease of doing business are higher than 60. And the next section, I will point out some common ground among these countries. First of all, their top 5 export partners, most of them have the USA and India. And for the USA, it is because of its strong economic status in the world. And also the India, besides its geographical advantage, its top 10 import goods are also its main reasons, like oil and mineral fuels and precious stones and metals. And these commodities are countries in the Middle East and North Africa export the most. And the second index we watch are the top 5 import partners. Most of them have the China, the USA, and the Germany. And the reason for the USA is almost the same as what I mentioned. As for the China, because it is famous for its low price products. And the Germany,
The reason can be divided into two parts. The first part is that it's top climbing for goods like electrical machinery and industrial machinery. And also the second reason is that its relationship with the Middle East, like German Middle East policy. And its abnormal side is that Lebanon's GDP growth rate and inflation consumer prices is the serious. So it is because its government corruption, religion collision, and also the explosion of the chemical materials happening in recent years. And also we have found that Turkey's GDP growth rate and also the inflation consumer prices is also the serious. And we also found that United Arab's total export and imports, their value is also the highest. As for import, it's because that the government there want to construct the infrastructure there, so they will have to purchase many goods or equipment to invest in there. And as for export, it is because that it is famous for selling their oils. And in the process, we are choosing between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and United Arab. And in the final, we have chosen Saudi Arabia as our final target because its inflation consumer prices, although it is not the lowest among these three countries, but it is tolerable. And also the United Arab. The reasons why we didn't choose the United Arab as our final target is because that its total export import is also maximum. So we think it is not a good opportunity to invest there. And as for Saudi Arabia's ease of doing business score and total tax rate, it is very acceptable, so we decided to invest in there. And this is the comparison among these three countries.
Thank you, Angelina, for the detailed explanation. I will now move on to the managerial implications for foreign investors. So, as mentioned previously, we decided to invest in Saudi Arabia. Why do we want to invest in Saudi Arabia? We have 5 reasons for that. First of all, Saudi Arabia is the largest economy in the Middle East. It has a GDP of $800 billion and a GDP per capita of $22,000 US per capita. The second is one of the most important ones. It's the strategic location of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia borders several countries in the Middle East and also has a very long coastline which has several ports which are very necessary for doing business. The third pillar is the political stability. Saudi Arabia has a monarchy and it has a king, and the king has been there for quite a while now. So Saudi Arabia has a relatively political stability compared to other Middle Eastern countries where this isn't the case. And the fourth reason we found is Vision 2030, and that's probably our most important reason to invest in Saudi Arabia. What is Vision 2030? Vision 2030 is an ambitious plan made by the Saudi government to improve the Saudi Arabian economy and quality of living in 5 aspects. First of all, it is increasing non-oil exports. As has been said previously, Saudi Arabia mostly exports oil, and they want to improve other sectors as well to become a big player in the economy outside of only oils. The second is that they want to create job opportunities, lower the unemployment rate, and increase participation of women in the workforce. And they want to increase the quality of life, meaning to focus on having better education, establishing like top 100 universities there. And the fourth part of Vision 2030 is having better infrastructure. Saudi Arabia has a big land, but there's not a lot of people living there for the amount of land mass it has, and they want to make it more accessible. So they are trying to build a high-speed railway and more airports. And the last one of Vision 2030, which is particularly interesting for us, is that they want to encourage foreign investors and encourage privatization, which is very necessary for doing business there. And the fifth is also already mentioned. Saudi Arabia has a relative good score of doing business. So the investment opportunities we found are energy and petrochemicals, tourism, real estate, and infrastructure. And the ones we think is the best is real estate. We want to invest in real estate, and we have 3 reasons for it. First of all is the birth rate. The Saudi Arabia has a birth rate of 2.5 per 1. This is relatively high compared to Qatar, which is only 1.8, and the United Arab Emirates, which is 1.5. So the Saudi Arabian population is growing, and one fact that's particularly interesting is that 37% of the population is under 14, which means that it's very good for investing in real estate because all these people would need to have houses. The second is that the government has very ambitious projects. I don't know if you guys have seen the really interesting 5-minute video about the line that's currently producing. The line is a linear smart city which should hold 9 million residents once it's done. And it's like completely based on renewable energy as well. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia has a very ambitious plan of hosting the FIFA World Cup in 2030. And as I mentioned previously, they're currently heavily investing in the infrastructure to make every part of the country more accessible, so more airports and high-speed railways. What are the risks and challenges that we have seen? We have found currency risk because the Saudi Riyal, which is the currency, is pegged to the US dollar, which means that the US dollar heavily influences the Saudi Arabian economy and their currency, especially with high inflation rates in the United States currently, which also really affects the Saudi Riyal. The second one is economic risk. We've already mentioned that the Saudi economy is heavily dependent on oil, so if the prices of oil would decrease suddenly, the Saudi economy would be in great danger. So therefore we would advise to diversify their economy, which is already part of the plans that the government currently has.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so you still have one or two slides, right?
Yeah.
About the suggestions.
Yeah, we only have 2 suggestions left.
So I think the suggestions are related to the why you invested in Saudi Arabia in more details, right? Okay,
Yes.
so then I think we can skip that. So you made a very interesting recommendation about investing in real estate in Saudi Arabia because of 3 reasons. I can see that the first row, of course, will be a promising reason, and of course they have their ambitious projects going on, not only in Saudi Arabia but also in neighboring countries as well. But the infrastructure, I'm a little bit confused about that because, of course, we know that there are a lot of the constructions are going on in Saudi Arabia. But in terms of the transportation, or for instance, the railway, it is still quite challenging to build a railway in the area due to the climate, due to the geographic area. It's quite difficult to build this kind of public transportation on the ground in the deserts. So that could be the issue. Maybe you can look at it today in the next presentation. But the real estate is still a very huge industry, and including, I think mainly you talk about the construction sites, right? But as you know that Saudi Arabian government, they already have a lot of capital to build their own infrastructure. But why do you think they need a foreign investor to do the same thing?
Thank you for the question. As we've mentioned in the government's Vision 2030, they encourage foreign investors and also privatization. Furthermore, the country is also heavily focusing on learning English and having more foreign people and expats living there. So that's one of the reasons as well why we think real estate would be a very good business.
Maybe the real estate services, right, the agency, it could be a very good entry point. Not necessarily the manufacturing parts, right? Because obviously you can't really compete with the local players in Saudi Arabia. But services, of course, you can service for the foreign investor to make itself as the agency to provide this kind of services. But other than that, I think you should take advantage of 2030 vision, especially when they call for the non-oil exports. There are a lot of opportunities about that, not necessarily about the real estate. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you planning to invest long term, like building real estate and selling it by yourself, like lands, houses, or are you planning to cooperate with government and create some government projects?
Good question, thank you. Of course, we think that's very necessary to cooperate with the government. It's a monarchy, it's very authoritarian, so it's better to be friends with the government than having them as enemies. But we think it's best to diversify our portfolio, so also like focusing on the birth rate, on residential areas, but also include like options for tourism, especially since they have such investment projects with the Line and the FIFA World Cup maybe going to be hosted in Saudi Arabia. So really diversify it.
And maybe just a little suggestion, because in countries with strong government power and like monarchy, they may have poor government decisions, so you should be very cautious selecting your projects. Yes, and especially, for example, in case of real estate, because some projects, like maybe even Line, are questionable in terms of building cities. So yeah, but it's great idea to cooperate with government.
Thank you.
Okay, the final group, group 8. Oh, one last thing about the previous group, because you also selected Turkey in your group, right? So where is your group? Group 7? Yeah, you selected Turkey in your region, right? But I think Turkey is not in the Middle East. If you look at the data in the world bank, it's actually belong to Europe and Central Asia. Okay, maybe next time you can remove Turkey, okay?
Good afternoon, investors. We are Team 8, and today we will be presenting Africa excluding North Africa to you. This is our table of contents in our work division. So first, I will start with the indicators data. This is the economic aspect, the business environment, but mostly we wanted to share with you 6 important points. The first is that 8 out of 10 countries have negative trade numbers, the lowest being Kenya. The second is this is the average GDP in millions USD, the lowest being Central African Republic, and the highest being Nigeria. The third is the average GDP growth rate is 5.6, lowest being Central African Republic, and the highest being Rwanda. The average ease of doing business score is 57.39, the lowest being Central African Republic, highest being Rwanda again. And then the average overall labor market efficiency score is 56.94, lowest being Central African Republic because they have no data, and the highest being Rwanda. And lastly, the average overall business dynamic score is 55.52, lowest being Central African Republic, and the highest being Rwanda.
We don't have much time, so we just focus on GDP and ease of doing business score. And first is GDP. South Africa and Nigeria has the highest GDP among Africa for their rich natural resources. South Africa exports precious metal and Nigeria exports oil. And while the Central African Republic is the lowest GDP among Africa for these 3 reasons: limited natural resources, poor infrastructure, and political instability. And we believe these 3 characteristics are pretty common in a poorly developed country. And next is ease of doing business for. And we have noticed that Rwanda and Kenya have the highest score in Africa for their government reforms, and this allows them to do a lot of investment in infrastructure, and including the electricity and telecommunication, and that allows the company to operate and compete effectively. And, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So, from the 10 nations that we considered, we've narrowed it down to 2 so far, and that's South Africa and Rwanda. Now, South Africa and Rwanda have very stable and consistent economic indicators, which is why we've considered these 2 countries as our top 2 picks. Now, as you can see, the ease of doing business in Rwanda is fantastic, especially in the African region. Generally in the African region, from the previous economic indicators, you can see that the ease of doing business is not very high, but Rwanda stands out amongst the rest. Now, the product market efficiency as well in Rwanda is relatively high in comparison to its peers, which is definitely a great indicator for entering with FDI. Thirdly, we noticed that the unemployment rate in South Africa was extremely high. This may have to do with political tensions occurring right now, and so we noticed as well that Rwanda's unemployment rate, although it's not great, in the African region this actually isn't too bad. And one last thing that we really wanted to focus on was the GDP growth rate. One thing that Rwanda's been fantastic with is their GDP growth rate over the last 10 years, which has been around 8.3%. So it's a very consistent and well-performing GDP growth rate throughout the last decade. Now, we've considered the qualitative factors, but we also wanted to consider a couple of quantitative factors as well. So this is the political stability index, which ranges from 2.5 to negative 2.5. As you can see, because of political tensions in South Africa, it's dramatically dropped down in 2021. As an investor that wants to invest directly into another region, this is something that needs to be very strongly considered. Now you can see South Africa is trending downwards, whereas right now Rwanda is trending upwards. Political stability is fantastic when you're considering investing into a region. We made a SWOT analysis, and what we decided to do was we chose Rwanda for a lot of those quantitative elements. So within the SWOT analysis, we covered the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths of Rwanda. Now, one strength of Rwanda is it has a very low crime rate. In Africa, this is a big problem. Fortunately for Rwanda, they have a very stable government. The citizens of Rwanda highly trust the police force, and this has led to very low rates of crime in the region. It also has a very high GDP growth rate in relation to its peers, and also the government is quite stable, especially in the African region. Some of the weaknesses include, yes, it has a low GDP, but it is growing at a high rate, which is fantastic. They do also rely on aid from outside, so a lot of charities and other governments from outside of the region are currently injecting funds into the Rwandan government. So 10 years ago, the Rwandan government relied on 80% of aid from outside, but now it's about 33%. So they are making improvements to work on this. The last thing with weaknesses is the language barrier. So a lot of Rwandan locals, about 99%, only speak the local language. You only have about 0.2% that speak English and about 3% that speak French. So to get into this region, you're going to have to find experts that speak more than one language. Some opportunities, they're making some fantastic bilateral relations with Tanzania. The location could act as a central hub in Africa. Rwanda is quite central and it's not too far from the coast as well. And lastly, the Rwandan government are really focusing on their clean energy initiatives into the future. So this is a fantastic opportunity for those looking to make FDI into Rwanda. Now some of the threats, now reduction of aid could be a major threat, especially in the COVID-19 post-pandemic environment. If outside sources choose to reduce their aid to the government, they may struggle economically and financially, which could lead to imbalances in their society. Also dependent on a single industry, so about 80% of Rwandan citizens are employed by the agricultural industry. This is something the government's looking to diversify on, but this is still a threat if, for example, a natural disaster occurs or prices for agriculture drops. This could affect the economy negatively. And lastly, reliance on Tanzania's ports. So they have about 70% of their import-export through the Tanzanian docks. Now, some of the investment opportunities that we've located are ITT, sustainable energy, manufacturing, and agro-processing. In regards to sustainable energy, they want about 100% of their electricity availability target by 2030. So they're making massive strides right now, especially within the government, to improve their electricity availability in the region. And they want 60% of that to be electricity produced. Now, the final slide, we have some solutions to the risks and challenges. So firstly, financial management. We really wanted to talk about currency management here, and to control these risks, we would consider using the US and the Tanzanian currency side by side. The US currency is highly used in the African region, and also we would consider hedging to reduce risk. With acquiring local talent, this would be a great way to reduce risk in the region because of the language barriers. And proper training systems, obviously many of the training systems would be in the local country, but we would have to do those in the Rwandan language. And finally, diversification. Diversification would be for different areas within the Rwandan region in case of natural disasters or unexpected shocks to the economy. But aside from that, thank you guys for listening, and we are open to questions.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I think you presented very good presentation skills. Well done. Okay. And so I think your area is one of the poorest area involved, right? So, but that's a stereotype. You really look at into the data, there are some promising trends, right? Like you just say, I think you find very good analytical framework about SWOT, especially targeting Rwanda and see what would be the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think that's very good, and other group can learn from your group as well. And I think as a foreign investors, the unexplored market essentially means the great potential. So in the next presentation, I'm looking forward to see more in-depth analysis, which industry in particular is it Rwanda still stands out. We will see about in conjunction with the company's social factors.
Yeah, I also agree. I think with Rwanda as well, when you look at South Africa, there's already many investors in there, so you don't get that first mover advantage. And this is why we also consider Rwanda as well, is if you haven't, there's not as much competition in Rwanda, so you do have that opportunity for a first mover advantage.
Exactly. As you know, that South Africa is very good at for industrial diamonds. There will be saturating markets, so Rwanda will be a better choice. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll finish all the 8 presentations, and you will get in the written feedback, not written feedback, my feedback about your presentations, each of them. And I think I will give it to you once you finish all the 3 presentations, okay? Any questions for the presentations? No? So you already know that how to prepare for the presentations and how to look at the data. You also learn from other groups as well, right? So I'm looking forward to the next presentations, okay? And make sure that you can make a consistent recommendation. For instance, if you look into the other factors, culture and social next time, will you still choose the country you chose this time? Maybe you can answer the question like that next time, okay? Thank you. I will see you next week. We're going to look at the lecture on culture, okay?